Isla O'Connell in the pledge.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands,
one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Even now, have a moment of silence.
Okay, thank you very much. Second item on our agenda. Thank you. Under recognitions, our section of recognitions, we have the Virginia Thespian Middle School Theater Director of the Year recognition, Mr. Frank Wheeler.
Good evening, School Board, Dr. Nichols. It is my honor and pleasure to announce a couple spotlights this evening, and we also have some students as well. So the first individual that I would like to spotlight has made a significant impact on our students at New Kent Middle School as it relates to the performing arts, whether it be her advanced theater arts students or sixth graders who are taking introduction to theater arts. Her instruction and passion for performance and teaching students all the skills and fun activities that go along with theater arts is unprecedented. The individual that nominated her, I would like to read exactly what she said for this award. Against all odds, April continues to provide enriched theater opportunities to her students and community. It is a joy and a pleasure to have April as a colleague in NKCPS, and we are incredibly lucky to have her bringing theater to our community. The 21-22 Virginia Thespians Middle School Teacher of the Year has been awarded to Miss April Salvin.
Just to put this in perspective, there are over 133 school divisions in the state of Virginia, many more middle schools, and our very own is the Virginia Thespians Middle School Director of the Year. Students, there's no surprise in that, is there? You're not this quiet during theater.
And so we are also in for a very special treat. I'll let Ms. Salvin have the floor, but as you probably know, this is perfect timing because the middle school has partnered up with the high school, and they are about to begin their Lion King Junior performances starting tomorrow night at 7. It's going to run on Friday. Excuse me, we're not in Wednesday just yet. It's on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. And so so we have a special treat for you, but I'll let Ms. Salvin speak on that.
Thank you, Mr. Wheeler. It's my honor to be able to teach these amazing students in this school district. So I appreciate everything that you do to support the performing arts in our schools. And so we want to give you a little taste of what's going to be happening this weekend. I just can't wait to be king ensemble for our Matata cast. We have 2 casts. So if depending on which night you come, you will see a different show. So if you guys could come and line up right here, and I will.
This is your opportunity to be YouTube famous. This is streamed live. This could be your big break.
You're so embarrassing.
I've never seen a king of beasts quite so good.
I'm gonna beat the main event like nothing was before. I'm brushing up on the No say do this.
I said that I.
Say be
We
there.
pronounce that.
No say stop that.
I meant to say that.
Say see here.
Now see here.
Free to run around all day.
Check me out.
Free to do it all my way. Everybody look left. Everybody look right. Everybody look on. Standing in the spotlight.
Yes.
It's gonna be King Sam's finest day. Oh, I just can't wait to be king. Oh, we just can't wait to be king. Oh, I just can't wait to be king.
And so if you want to see more of that, please buy a ticket and come see us this weekend, Thursday at 7, Friday at 7, Saturday at 2, and at 7. Thank you for allowing us to be here.
Thank you.
You.
Great job, guys.
All right, I know I'm excited to see those performances later on in the week. All right, so the second part of our New Kent Middle School Spotlight goes to a teacher who has mastered the art of encouraging students to read and to read a lot. This teacher has partnered with former NFL player Malcolm Mitchell to participate in a Read Bowl competition. This is our second year with Malcolm and the Read Bowl competition, and this year is quite the honor. We are the official Virginia state champs for the bowl in Miss Hathaway's class. So at this time, I would like to recognize Miss Tamika Hathaway, our English 6 teacher, as well as some students who participated in the Read Bowl.
Okay, kids, we're about to break into song. Playing. That is an awesome act to follow with Miss Salvin. I'm so excited about Lion King. These are an amazing group of readers. The Read Bowl competition, again, this is our second year participating. Last year, we were the global champions. It was huge, but it was also during a pandemic. It was a lot easier to keep the kids at home reading and accumulating those minutes. This year, we won the state championship. These students averaged reading a week 7 to 8 hours. Wow. And to just put that in perspective, they read both of these novels in under 4 weeks. And they did that in addition to their nonfiction reading, the writing that we support here at the middle school. They did a variety of activities prior to us doing the Read Bowl. Malcolm Mitchell is a former NFL player. These are his 2 books. We have My Favorite Book in the World and The Magician's Hat. He started this for primary and elementary school kids, but understood the importance of getting kids to continue reading, to expose them to vocabulary, which will open up their worlds and many more opportunities. He was a New England Patriot, sadly. We were kind of hoping for a Dallas Cowboy, but he did promise us that if we won, we were going to be able to meet Tom Brady. We did a virtual conference with him last year as the global champions, and only in New Kent will you find students bold enough to ask, do you know Tom Brady? And can we meet him? Sadly, we did not win globally, so we didn't get to meet Tom Brady this year. However, he is sending more books to our classroom. He has spotlighted New Kent nationally. We have been featured on his Instagram page. We are featured on his Share the Foundation page. He has taken recommendations from these students because they are articulate and they're awesome readers and they're unapologetic in how they feel. So I'm going to get out of the way just in case you have any questions whatsoever. They are panicked. So, because they're like, wait, we got to do what? Whew. But just feel free to ask them anything. And here you go.
I'd like to know a little bit about what the two books are about. Can somebody give us a brief description?
Okay, oh, come on. You can do iron trial. Yes. Everyone wants to do the iron trial.
Okay. So the iron trial is about a 13-year-old boy named Colin Hunt, whose family is magic, just magic. He's about magic. And his mother was killed during the Cold Massacre of okay. And so Alistair Hunt, Colin's dad, hates magic. So when they have to go to the iron trial, the trial to see who can get into the magic school and who can't, Alistair tells Colin to throw the thing so he'll lose because he hates magic. But his teacher, Rufus, saw something in him. Even though he got the lowest score, he got negative points. Got a record for negative points the first time. So Rufus brought him in for some reason because he saw something in him. So Colin started the iron trial with his two friends, Tamara and Aaron. No. Yeah. Aaron. It is Aaron. Okay. And Aaron. So in the first book, in the iron trial, which is the first book, there's 4 other books following the series. The first book is about just teaching Colin about magic. And for the first thing they do, all they're doing is learning how to move sand with their mind. They're learning how to move sand with their mind from one place to another. But that's it. That's for like the first few months.
Now, don't give it all away.
In the book, the magic school called the Magisterium is underground in caverns. So we got to learn about some caverns along with the book.
That's great.
And how did y'all know? What did y'all get to do? Oh, go ahead, Rob.
We did an escape room, and it was like there was a bunch of like clues that we had to find, and you had to click on them, and it's like digital, and it would like pop up with like a question and a clue, and then it would give you hints and stuff. And you have to figure it out from what you know from the book, and then you can escape and tour the tavern, see what it's like.
Is it like a new choose your own adventure book from my past? I remember doing those when I was a kid. They had
There's
those.
very specific tasks in the iron trial. Like when Owen was speaking on the fact you have to learn to sort sand
From light to dark.
But the cool thing is the setting of the book. Does anybody remember where the school was? Yeah, but where? What state?
Oh yeah,
It was yeah.
Virginia, but did we figure out where? We think we know where it is. We're not for certain. Does anybody remember what cabin we went to? Okay. Katie told me to tell y'all it was in Luray.
Luray Caverns.
Caverns.
That makes my guess.
On a virtual tour of Luray Caverns as well.
I'm telling you, there were some secret doors in there.
They are, when they actually took the tour of Luray Caverns at the escape room, they swear they see the doors. They have found a way in. Does anybody want to tell them about the Great Green Heights? Okay, go ahead. Well, Dad, go ahead and help her.
The Great Green Heist, I liked it because it was about children like our age. So it was about like the same middle school drama all of us go through. So we could like relate to it. And I thought it was really funny because they were like I don't really know how to describe it, but I could relate to a lot of the stuff they were doing, and it was just funny.
There were 3 main characters, like the main characters, but the one that the book's basically about was Jackson Green, the Great Green Heist, and it's basically about him and his friends coming up together to rig an election against their one mortal enemy, who I don't know why, but some of the school likes and a lot doesn't. I can kind of see why, but there's always another half of the story. But I love how it's kind of like legit, and there's like a whole code of conduct, like 15, I think, was it 15 codes of conducts, and like they have like actual rules to it. It's not just like, I feel like breaking into the principal's office for a phone just to do it. There's like actually a reason.
Yeah.
I
feel like it's a good skill to have.
In the Great Green Heist, there is one character that I certainly don't like, is Keith, because he's running for president with Gabby, and sorry, I'm very nervous. And he tried to get Dr. Kelsey, which is like the principal or the superintendent of the school, to rig the election so he could win. And so he was just being very selfish about it, and I don't really like that. So yeah.
So they had to steal the election back. So that's what.
That's good.
So they're breaking in for a good reason.
Keith's dad paid Dr. Kelsey to let him win.
That is the most unbelievable middle
Yeah, we don't know where they got the money in this particular middle school. That was the only.
His dad. Yeah, his dad bribed Dr. Kelsey to let Keith win.
So those are 2 books you would highly recommend.
Yes.
Okay.
Especially the part about breaking into the offices.
I need to stay a couple
That
steps
was the
ahead of
best
you guys.
That's right.
They had to make a copy of the key.
What's the type of key? That's the type of lock. Gives a beat.
Babel. I don't know.
Never mind. See, this is why your office is safe.
But congratulations, state champs. That's a
Thank
big
you.
honor.
I'm so proud. Thank you.
And Isla, I mispronounced your last name, Isla O'Connor. So thanks for doing the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. Nope, no worries. Thank you so much. All right, next on our agenda under recognitions, a recognition of March as Youth Art and Music in Our Schools Month. Dr. Nichols.
Absolutely. It is March is Youth Arts and Music in Our Schools. And I think you've seen a little bit of all of that already this evening. I do highly recommend Lion King Jr. I will be there for opening night on Thursday. Now that I know it's going to be a different show each night, I may have to come back again. I wanted to highlight a couple of our artists, our elementary artists that put in some submissions. The Virginia School Board Association has a spring art contest, and we have 2 regional participants / winners. So the first is from New Kent Elementary, and that's Leah Finout. I believe she's with us tonight. This is for you.
Thank you.
And then I'll do my best in person. This is her artwork.
Good job, Leah.
It's great.
So you want to tell us a little bit about your artwork?
Well,
it's a bear, and I really love lots of colors. Like, I didn't really want all the same colors because I feel like it's more beautiful with different colors because it just seems more, I don't know, beautiful and strong.
how it is, and yeah, I feel like it's me for the mirror.
I love it. Very nice. And her art teacher, Susan Vick, is here with us tonight. And then the principal, Dr. Amy Stam, is here as well. So we want to congratulate you.
Thank you. Congratulations.
So we also have an elementary finalist from George Watkins, and that is Ava Robertson. Ava is here. All right.
Thank you.
This is a copy of it, just so you guys can kind of see that.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Ava, can you tell us about your drawing, a little bit about your art?
Miss Countess told us to do like a silhouette of like a tree and a fence, and bring some color into it with a sunset and make it reflect on the snow. My main thing was about the reflection, because I really like how the colors are like blended together with the sunset and reflected on the snow.
It's gorgeous. How long did it take you to create that?
I can't really remember.
It's gorgeous.
It's
Thank
very
you.
pretty. Thank you.
And her art teacher, Miss Countess, is here.
Thank
as
you,
well.
Miss Countess.
So Ava, this is what I will say about that picture is that if I can get a framed copy of that, I will pay you $50 for that picture. Miss Countess, that's your job. You got your first commission piece.
Thank you. Congratulations again. Okay, next item, recognition of School Social Worker Week. Dr. Katina Clark.
Good evening, Madam Chairperson, Vice Chair, members of the school board, and Dr. Nichols. It is my pleasure this evening to recognize our school social workers for National School Social Work Week. So there was a lot of W's in there. The theme this year is Time to Shine. Our school social workers are involved in quite a variety of activities for our staff, our students, and our families. And some of those include conducting social history evaluations. They're responsible for attendance and truancy issues, coordinating homeschool, working with students and families who may be homeless. They're also a member of various teams throughout the school division, to include the eligibility teams, school crisis and safety teams, threat assessment teams, and they're also valuable members of our mental health professionals. So again, it is my honor to recognize our two school social workers, Letitia Hill and Pamela Brooks, for National School Social Work Week. Thank you.
Thank you. Important work there. Okay, I got so ahead of myself and excited. We've got to do the certification of the closed session. So Mr. Mead, would you please read the certification of closed session?
Whereas the New Kent County School Board has convened a closed meeting on this date pursuant to an affirmative record recorded vote and in accordance with the provisions of the Virginia Freedom of Information Act, and whereas Section 2.2-3711 of the Code of Virginia requires a certification by New Kent County School Board that such closed meeting was conducted in conformity with Virginia law. Now therefore be it resolved that the New Kent County School Board hereby certifies that to the best of each member's knowledge, only public business matters lawfully exempted from open meetings requirement by Virginia law were discussed in closed meeting, to which this certification resolution applies, and only such public business matters as were identified in the motion convening the closed meeting were heard, discussed, or considered by the New Kent County School Board.
Thank you, Mr. Mead. Do I hear a motion to approve the certification of the closed session?
A motion that we approve the certification for closed session.
Thank you, Ms. Daskill. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. McBeath. And a vote?
Aye.
All right, the motion carries. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. Board members, by now you've had the opportunity to review the items listed on the consent agenda. including minutes from previous meetings, bills and payroll, monthly financials, and the superintendent's recommendations regarding personnel matters. Do I hear a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
I make a motion, we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mead. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Barber. Any discussion, board members? Okay, if there's no discussion, a vote, please.
Aye.
Aye. All right, motion carries. Next item on the agenda is the citizen comment period. As a reminder, before we begin, I'd like to thank everyone for coming out tonight to speak. Please note that your comments are limited to 3 minutes. Once the timer sounds, please promptly finish your comment and return to your seat. It is customary for the school board not to make comment during the citizen comment period. Please make sure that your contact information is provided on the sign-up sheet if you would like someone to follow up with you. Thank you again for coming. So we have 12 speakers signed up this evening. I'll go ahead and read the first 3 so you can be ready for the on deck line. Our first speaker is Victoria Brame. Second is Mr. Peter Lunding, and third is Keith Hartman. So Ms. Brame.
Hello. I am an English professor, a former middle school teacher, and I currently have 2 teenage daughters, one of which attends school here in New Kent. I wanted to take this opportunity to thank school officials for doing a lot of work the last few months to keep diverse books in the middle school collection, from implementing new checkout procedures to creating review committees. I recognize a lot of time has been spent to protect parent choices. These policies are so important because they represent what it means to live in a democracy where one parent doesn't get to decide what another parent's child reads. Over the last few months, I have heard citizens comment on how they do not want their children to have access to books that are sexually explicit. I don't either. However, the problem with this argument is that people are using their own subjective definition of sexually explicit and applying it incorrectly to books like The Poet X. A book is not labeled sexually explicit or pornographic unless it is written with the intent to arouse the reader. That is not the case with The Poet X. And that is why parent choice is crucial. We must decide for ourselves what we want our children to read. At the February 22nd work session, Representative Mead said he wanted parents to know that the school board would have the final say. And I'm really looking forward to hearing what each of you thought about The Poet X. I recognize you might not all love the book as much as I do, and I can even appreciate that there might be words or phrases that you might not feel comfortable letting your child read. But as the Supreme Court ruled, that is not grounds to remove The Poet X from the middle school library. The verdict in the school board case against Pico in 1982 was that books must be reviewed as a whole, not by sentences, and on the entirety of their literary merit. When it comes to The Poet X, it has won numerous accolades, which is why I trust when the district committee meets soon, hopefully, it will rule that it should be returned to the New Kent Middle School collection. This means as elected public officials, you will be tasked with putting aside your personal choices in order to ensure that the choices of all parents in New Kent County are protected. Because in the land of the free, the government, and in this case, the school board, does not have the right to limit what parents permit their children to read. New Kent Middle School is a public institution, and as a result, its library needs to be filled with books as diverse as its community. Parents do not want these choices. They are free to select private schools. I hope you act quickly to return the book to its shelves. Thank you.
Okay, our next speaker, Mr. Lunding.
Good evening, school board members, Dr. Nichols, and staff. Good evening. I'm here representing Mr. Ron Vaught, who was unable to be here tonight. I wish to address a couple of issues and hopefully clarify the position of some of the citizens in New Kent County. I want to talk about CRT. I want to talk about books. First, allow me to help you understand what is at stake as far as CRT, critical race theory, with all its many disguises such as SEL, harmony, etc. They so negatively affect the outcomes of education. Such programs, or I shall say propaganda, create mass confusion and misrepresentations of specific cultures and how these cultures can properly interact with each other in a school setting. CRT and affiliated propaganda promote separation and division by falsely creating categories of victims and oppressors. They intentionally highlight race differences rather than taking all students coming together for a proper education, irrespective of their skin color. In itself, it promotes racism and has no place in our schools. Skin color or differences are not a natural concern of children. They are only an issue when racist adults decide to accentuate the propaganda through such programs as CRT. I note a quote that you have on your hallway. It says, "Intelligence plus character. That is the goal of true education." That's a quote from Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. I'll repeat that: intelligence plus character. That's the goal of the education system. We need to sit down and talk about basics. We need to talk about intelligence. We need to talk about character. We don't need to be talking about division. As far as the books utilized and available for our students, let me say this: as a nation formed by the Judeo-Christian values and foundations formed on morality, we are asking the wrong question when it comes to illicit materials contained in some books in our system. There is a scripture found in Proverbs which states, "There is a way that seems right unto man, but in the end leads to death." The overall question should not be if the book is right for proper education of our students, but is it righteous for the future of our students? If we give way to immorality and simply turn our back on absolute foundations on which our nation was formed, then we become a ship on an open sea without a rudder. This is not necessarily censorship or an attempt to score a victory. It is far more important than that. It's about stopping progressive movements to the top of a slippery slope of total immorality and loss of values in our school systems. I urge you, when you deal with these books, we need to have an open forum, and we need to have transparency.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you
Lundy.
very much.
And next up is Mr. Keith Hartman. After Mr. Hartman is Fran Kennedy, then Thomas Miller, and then Susan McTheney.
Good evening, folks. How are you all? My name is Keith Hartman, and I am in District 3. We appreciate the process that you all have implemented to review the books such as Poet X. But what we find difficult to accept is that educators in our school system would think that Poet X would be appropriate for young students. This isn't Loudoun County. We're thankful for a vigilant and engaged parent that had this parent not examined this book, it would have been in the hands of an 11-year-old. But the bigger question in our minds is, how did the book get into the middle school in the first place? And what other books of questionable content are in our libraries? Poet X promotes premarital sex, celebrates homosexuality. It is anti-Catholic, anti-Christian, anti-Bible. It is extremely non-traditional and undermines the values, the vast majority of New Kent citizens, me included. But what other books like Poet X are in our schools? I think we need to take a closer look at the recommended books that come from Virginia Department of Education under the previous leftist woke administration. We need to make sure that parent involvement and input in the selection of the books. We need to adopt a much higher moral and ethical standard for our precious children. Let's not sacrifice our children's innocence and our parental rights at the altar of so-called diversity and inclusion. There are other more positive books that can accomplish what Poet-X actually fails to accomplish. Thank you.
Thank you. Fran Kennedy.
Good evening, and thank you again for your service. So my question last time about New Kent Elementary, I think you misunderstood it. So I said Berkshire is growing in leaps and bounds. And then are there any building improvements or any aesthetics improvements planned for New Kent Elementary? I just was curious because it is old and you're building this beautiful new school. So that was my question. I can type that up for you or email it to you.
I got it this time. Thank
Okay,
you.
thanks. And then I just was curious, I was talking to my niece who teaches English in Utah, and she said the books they get complaints about the most are John Steinbeck of Mice and Men. And then I know To Kill a Mockingbird has recently received a lot of attention, and Dr. Seuss. So I was just simply curious if those books are in our schools or not. Dr. Seuss books, John Steinbeck of Mice and Men, and To Kill a Mockingbird. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kennedy. And next, Mr. Thomas Miller.
Well, I wasn't going to comment about the book because I think we've beat that horse sufficiently, but I operate on the basis that no horse is too dead not to continue to beat. What happened with this book issue is interesting. I think it was handled very poorly by the superintendent and by this board. The issue was the book was given to an 11-year-old, put in his book bag, and the mother saw it, and the mother took issue with a page in the book. That was the issue. The mother didn't say remove the book from the library. She had an issue with the fact that the book was given to her 11-year-old son, and that's understandable. I think allowing parents to opt in or opt out on some of these books, which I think you're doing with your new policy, is an excellent way to approach it. But I think the whole Poet-X book issue got kicked off for that one reason. I want to shift to SEL, and I have a couple of questions for Dr. Nichols. Did the school board approve Stanford Harmony and Second Step SEL programs? And if they did, when did they approve it and when did they vote on it? One of the concerns that parents and citizens have with these two programs is they're copyrighted, and the only way for us to look at them is to go to the school and get on an open computer and look at it. We do have reports from parents that there is some sexually explicit material, quote unquote, that a mixed class, I don't know what grade, was asked, what would you do if sexually explicit pictures were sent to your phone? The child came home. It was very uncomfortable in answering that question. I don't know if it was a verbal or written response. So the presentation that was given by Dr. Nichols, and I believe Mr. Ross at the last work session was interesting, but that just touches the surface. There's a lot of folks that think SEL walks into CRT. And I don't know how any of you could have looked at the program because you don't have any more right to look at it than I do. You'd have to go to the school to look at it. I think you need to take a look at putting programs in these schools that parents and citizens have to go to the school and sit down for hours to review. The next item is the budget process, which was presented at the last meeting, and I'm going to make a suggestion. I participated in the Chesterfield County Citizens Advisory Committee associated with the Chesterfield County school budget. You do have parent involvement, but I think you need to involve citizens as well as parents.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. Up next is Susan McTheny, and then after Ms. McTheny, Robert Cudley, and then Wanda Espaillat.
I'm Susan McTheny, and I'm a retired educator from a neighboring school district where I taught for 37 years, 35 in a middle school. I retired in 2016. We moved to New Kent from Newport News when our oldest son was 3 years old, and because we wanted a more rural and conservative community. We found that in New Kent. I started attending school board meetings in the fall this year because of my grandchildren. I was concerned about issues reported in the news, such as CRT, which was often disguised as inclusion, diversity, and equity, that were prevalent in many schools across the country. And I wanted to know if this more radical agenda had infiltrated New Kent schools. When my sons attended New Kent schools, I knew their teachers and knew those teachers shared similar values practiced in our family. Attending church, being patriotic, a strong family unit that believed in right and wrong. I trusted them. With today's climate, citizens have lost faith and trust in teachers and school boards across the country. School boards should expect closer scrutiny by parents, grandparents, and the community. I do thank you for your service on the board, and you should know that people do pray for you and the decisions that you make, and we want what you want, which is the best for students in New Kent County. Regarding the book Poet X, I read it to understand what parents were concerned about. I don't just jump on the bandwagon because that's what everybody else is doing. And I read it. Did I like the book? Was I impressed by the numerous awards it has received? No. The Poet X depicts Hispanic culture in a stereotypical way. It disrespects Christianity, church, and Catholicism. It normalizes homosexual lifestyles, normalizes lying to parents, normalizes drug use, normalizes use of profanity, normalizes teenage sexual experimentation. If I had normalized those issues in my classroom, I would have lost my job. Schools must set a better example. Do today's students hear profanity on the bus, in school, on TV, on social media? Are they aware of alternate lifestyles, drug use, consequences of teenage sex, that people lie to one another? Sure, sad but true. However, the schools need to set a higher standard. Just because students have access to these situations or information out of school does not mean they are appropriate in school, and we should not have students believing that we condone them. Right is right, wrong is wrong, truth is truth, regardless of how society may view these issues. Would I want my granddaughter reading this book? She's in middle school this year. No. It was rated for 13 plus, and I disagree with that. Thank you.
Next, Robert Cudley.
Good evening. My name's Robert Cudley, and I've been a member for a lifetime of the silent majority, which could be looked at as the minority now. Events going on today in the world, in our country, and life in general as it is in the United States today, has caused me to awaken and not to be woke. Through education at Kent State University with a BS degree in conservation, starting right after the shootings at Kent State and having talked to and a student being in one of my classes who was shot and paralyzed in that incident, I have learned a lot on my own and not being taught. Through education, I have learned the real and silent majority is all races of colors, creeds, and it's broken down now by media, business leaders, educators, scholars, you name it, into individual groups, separating us separate, but we are together. We are one people who have a voice now. And people who have loud voices tend to be
more unknowledgeable of what they speak of. They get there by their loud voice and not through moral or morality. And I'm sorry here, I'm getting ahead of myself. They look for fame and fortune out of what they speak of. And to have a book declared by their accolades is like our actors today being awarded by other actors. Who are they to judge? They hand themselves out gifts all the time, but not the real people. Great leaders are remembered for their actions and character, not just by spouting off empty words and immoral thoughts. Please act in a positive way to us and to the morals and future of our children. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Cudley. Next, Ms. Wanda Espaillat, and after Wanda is Ken Gilman.
Good evening. I'm Wanda Espaillat from District 3. I will thank you for your service. And even though we're beating this dead horse, I'll beat it again. We realized that the book Poet X is under review and that it was chosen for Hispanic Heritage Month last October. My father was Dominican, from the Dominican Republic. All his family were Catholic. And what's really disturbing to me as a Hispanic and as a Christian is the book's misinterpretation of Catholicism, which reinforces negative stereotypes and misconceptions. The main character in Poet X has a negative, distorted, and irreverent attitude towards Jesus, the Bible, and Christianity in general. Yet, the vast majority of Hispanics are Catholic or Protestant. Why pick a book that is so offensive to the majority of Latinos? Why pick a book that undermines and ridicules the value system of the majority of Hispanics and New Kent citizens? Here's just one example in the book. It's in page 66. And this is from the book. When communion time comes, I stand in line with everyone else, and when Father Sean places the Eucharist onto my tongue, I walk away, kneel in my pew, and spit the wafer into my palm when I'm pretending to pray. I can feel the hot eyes of the Jesus statue watching me hide the wafer beneath the bench, where his holy body will now feed the mice. And although I will want to stay seated during communion, I get up every time, put the wafer in my mouth, then slip in beneath the pew, my hands shaking less and less every time I do. It's really not appropriate. That's all.
Thank you.
There should be better books in the public libraries. This is education. Not public libraries are available all over. This is a school. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Gilman. After Mr. Gilman is Wilma English.
Good evening, Dr. Nichols, members of the school board. My name is Ken Gilman. I'm from District 3. I guess I'm going to flog this pony just a little bit more, maybe with a little bit different take. I'm not going to read from the book Poet X. I'm going to assume that you've probably all taken a look at it. So we've heard a lot about people's concerns about that book in particular. I'm going to see if I can make a couple of useful points here. Okay. And by the way, I did my own research, consulted with my sister, who's a librarian in San Diego County, and learned quite a bit about age appropriateness for various books and access to books for various ages and so forth. I've come to I've read big parts of this book. I don't think I need to read the whole thing to get the point that allowing that to get to young people where it probably is not age appropriate, which ought to be determined by their parents in this sort of case, is a big concern. Now there may be certain books or educational material
that deals with religion or deals with sensitive subjects that is appropriate in some context. That's for you to determine. I'll just make a couple of, I've got a couple of perhaps rhetorical questions for you, and then see if I can close with just a couple of useful points, okay? So here's the question I asked myself. I also spent some years in education in the Army, chief of school. Does the reference material support a particular learning objective? Do you look at that in that context? What is the learning objective in that sort of a context where you're teaching things that are quite obviously offensive to many Christians? Okay. There has to be, if you're going to have material that's questionable like that, there ought to be a real useful point to presenting it to a child. All right. Not just under the guise of, well, it's a free country and everybody can have access to it or whatever. Again, so I recommend the school board. I think you've probably already read that book or read enough of it to get the point, right? But please understand that many parents want to reserve to themselves any religious teaching that rightfully belongs in their domain, within their home, within their church. So a central issue again is determining what is age appropriate for any reading material or any other lessons that may be presented to students. And the Poet-X is just, in my view, it's just a current example. We've all heard, is that my time? I beg your pardon. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Gilman.
All right. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for your time. Wilma English, and after Miss English, Mark Daniel, and then Leslie Trivet.
Thank you so much for this opportunity. Thank you for all the work that you have put in. And I am going to beat this horse just one more time. Because of the limitation of 3 minutes, we have had to divvy it out for so long. Wanda is my sister, so I am Dominican as well. I spent my summers in Dominican Republic. That's how I finally got fluent, because I was the last one that wanted to learn Spanish. And it was a wonderful experience. And again, the objective was, right, to expose students to the Hispanic culture. It fell miserably. There was nothing. Actually, she identifies with her Black race and the Black subculture rather than the Hispanic culture. So there goes that objective that he was talking about out the door. But I do want to refer to the religious aspect, because it's fascinating that I had the privilege of having, I didn't grow up as a Christian in a Christian home, but my father's side were all Catholic and my mother's side were all Protestant. So I come with that viewpoint, and this book bashes both of them. Manages to offend both of them. But again, as my sister said, most Hispanics are either Protestant or Catholic, and this book would be very offensive to them. Because, by the way, the Eucharist is not a wafer to be eaten by mice. It is a holy, sacred thing for any Christian. Okay, whether you're Protestant or Catholic, the communion service is a highly sacred thing. So for her to dismiss it, and we're dealing with young people that are impressionable, that right now they don't know their faith value system. Their parents are the ones that are supposed to be speaking about these issues. I have no problems, for example, in a theology class, in a certain, like when I taught multicultural studies, we did address the religion of each culture, but we did so in a very respectful way. We taught about Judaism and Islam and Christianity and the differences between the denominations. And we had an open discussion. However, it was an elective for juniors or seniors. So they were a little bit more equipped to handle this whole, the thing that really offends me, frankly, about this Poet-X is that the thread, and I as a writer, okay, I've written books with my husband. we always have a thread. The underlying current of this book is not the sexual. It's this anti-God, anti-Christian, anti-everything. Thank you for your time. Please remove it, period.
Miss English. Mark Daniel.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. My name is Mark Daniels, ladies and gentlemen. I'm not a vaunted English instructor at a school. I'm not a lawyer. I'm just a simple father and a parent. But if you've heard an explanation earlier, and if you follow this explanation that we don't have the right to even say what goes in our school, that means we couldn't stop anything. Why don't we have High Times magazine in your library? Why don't you have Cannabis magazine or nude magazines in your library, or old issues of Hustler or Penthouse? You know why? Because they're not appropriate. I like boxing, right? I don't incite people to go out and beat each other up and get hurt, because there's limits to how far that our society and our culture lets us go, right? I like fast cars. I don't race them down the road or let my 12-year-old friends get in the car and race them down the road. Why? Because it's appropriate things for appropriate times. And so when you go back to this book, you know, these people stand and say, well, I think it should be allowed. You should. Well, then I propose at the next school board meeting that you take Poet X out and have the superintendent of the school read to you page 326, which is a graphic description of a sex act. And if you don't do it, I don't believe that you think it's appropriate either. And then let's talk about one more thing. This was brought up to the school board. Shake your head if you want to. This is my time to talk. This was brought up a month ago, and you did the right thing. You wouldn't take this to your Sunday school class. You wouldn't take your friends with their 11-year-old girl children and read this page to them. Or maybe you would. Maybe you would. But it's not appropriate. So the community spoke their mind, and the right thing's done. Now you've come up with a process at the last meeting, right? The only reason there wasn't an outcry then is because you didn't let them speak. Something about, we're going to create this great committee over here. We'll pick three of those. We don't know who's being picked. We don't know what the subject is. We don't know any of that. Oh, but when they're finished, you may get a chance to get to the superintendent. He may look at it. Finally, someone who is elected on this board literally wrote something and say, well, you know what? This is not in our purview anymore, so we can't be made part of that. You're wrong. You're a leader. You were elected. Why does you get the great reports from the fellows that are doing the construction on your schools? They're doing a wonderful job, by the way. That's not within your individual purview. But you are responsible, because these people did not elect the superintendent. They didn't elect the principal. They elected you. Don't think that this is not within your purview. It's absolutely your responsibility. Finally, people will know. I'm almost done, Superintendent. People will know what you do, and I hope that everyone educates this entire community if you don't do it. The book has no business, and I look forward to hearing you reading next month or next meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Daniel. Leslie Trivett, our final speaker for this evening.
Thank you for your service to our community. I want to reassure everyone here and at home that no actual horse was harmed during the course of this meeting. Okay. I charge the school board to post the criteria, number 1, and the selection process, number 2, and the employees, number 3, who are involved in selecting instructional materials, curriculum, and library books. I would like this posted on the school board website so that we can print this and review it. I'm still not clear on what are the selection criteria for New Kent schools and who is in the chain of command and who makes the decisions at each step and who has the final say. If it's not clear to me, I'm sure there are other people who are confused about it. So please, I charge you, put this out there. If it's not in writing, if there's no policy, it's time to craft one. It's obviously needed. Since the audio was not operational at the last board meeting, I would like to briefly restate some of my remarks. I never said that classical literature is the only literature that should be in our schools. Contemporary books are great. Everyone's life does matter, but every choice and every action doesn't have to be respected or given equal respect. When there are materials that are given to our young children without parental choice that include smut, pornography, explicit sex acts, drug use, disrespecting parents, child sexual abuse, sex trafficking, gang rape, and others, these must not be foisted upon our children. If parents think this is appropriate for their children, they have other avenues for securing these materials. I do support diverse voices in our school and library when they present age-appropriate materials. I suggested a rating system for the school library with books rated G, PG, R, and X with labels like sexually explicit or you know the categories. I also suggest an opt-in form given to each parent at the beginning of each school year, along with all of our paperwork, that lets parents opt in for these questionable materials, not an opt-out form. The American Library Association and others are extremist political, social organizations with those agendas and cannot be used to qualify a book for selection into our school system. Thank you for your attention to this matter.
Okay, that's the end of our citizen comment period. Next on the agenda under new business is our K through 12 curriculum overview, Miss Jamie Hutchinson and Miss Dana Gum.
Good evening, Madam Chair, School Board, Dr. Nichols, and all guests both here in person and online. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Jamie Hutchinson, Supervisor of Secondary Curriculum and Instruction.
And I'm Dana Gum, the Elementary Supervisor of Curriculum and Instruction.
This evening, we are going to take you on a road trip to show how the curriculum developed by the Virginia Department of Education goes from their offices to our classrooms.
So the VDOE provides a lot of resources, so many resources to us, and their website is very cumbersome and hard to navigate. So we wanted to give you a sample of some of the things that they provide. So the first thing they provide that everybody has heard of is the Standards of Learning, or the SOLs. So they provide a document that lists everything that the students are required to learn, everything that the teachers are required to teach, and that's listed in a document called the Standards of Learning. A lot of people mix that up and think that the test is the SOL. The test is just an assessment of these standards. They also provide a curriculum framework, which is a more thorough explanation of those standards of learning, breaks it down into essential skills and knowledge of those standards and understanding behind it, and just a really more thorough breakdown. Another thing they also provide is a blueprint of the SOL test. Tells you exactly what standards are tested, how many questions are going to be on the test, and what is tested and how much of that is going to be tested in each area, in each reporting category. They also provide things like word wall cards in certain subject areas. And these are just like vocabulary words that kids need to know in order to be able to interpret the questions that are going to be on the test. So they give you a lot of things.
They have SOL tracking logs that teachers can use as they're going throughout the year to make sure that they've covered all of the material. The 4 core subjects have progression charts. This is the one for math. We have one we'll look at a little bit closer to for reading, but all 4 core subject areas have progression charts so that teachers can see which skills are brand new to students versus which ones they've had previous experience with. Several of the contents have pre-assessments. They also have sample lesson plans, practice release tests, and things like that for teachers to be able to use.
We could show you more examples, but these were just some of them. So there's lots of, they give you, professional development resources. The specialists in the VDOE provide instructional videos. There's writing prompts. They give you safety guidelines. There's so much stuff on there, which is a lot to navigate for teachers.
So we try to put it all together for them.
Getting back to vertical alignment, this year we have looked closely at the progression charts so that rather than looking at education 1 year at a time, we're really looking at our students' total educational experience. So this is a sample chart from English. This one in particular is focused on the reading standards. The light orange indicates skills that are being taught. The dark orange indicates skills that the students should already know by a certain grade level, but that could be reinforced. And this chart just shows for teachers how all of those different standards fit together.
And then this is just a picture of the elementary teachers, some at New Kent, some at Watkins. They've been working really hard with their principals, with the instructional coaches and specialists to start unpacking their standards more deeply to make sure they understand, and then using those progression charts to see where the students are coming from and then where they're going next year so that they can make sure that the students fill in any gaps and have any knowledge. And so they meet weekly with the specialists, they meet weekly with the coaches and principal, and they all sit down and they really they unpack those standards and make sure that they understand every single thing that the kids have to know.
PLCs.
Yeah, PLC, professional learning community. Mhm. And then, so one of the things we do is we work with the teams and we build these pacing guides, and these just map out everything the teachers have to teach and the kids have to know by quarter. And so this is just an example of one of the pacing guides that we use for the teachers, and linked into the pacing guides are curriculum guides that we create. And so this takes all those VDOE documents and kind of puts it into one guide for our teachers. So we've got this SOL on there, a suggested pacing, like this standard should take this long. What's the big idea behind it? Where are they coming from? Where are they going in those related standards? So we take that progression chart and break it down. What are some essential questions that kids should be able to answer? What are some common misconceptions that the kids might have when they're learning this? This guide also will have, what are understanding this standard section. I put in there things like, these are some things that, you need to know as the teacher. These are things that the kids need to know in order to understand this. And then essential knowledge and skills, each bullet that is a statement or something that the kids have to be able to do. It usually starts with a verb. That's something that says they have to be able to apply. They have to be able to, I can't read that far away, but they have to be able to apply or represent or recall. So it's really specific. I put in their vocabulary words. And then we also put in their literature connections. So books that are relevant to this topic. So it might not be a English or reading standard, like this is a math curriculum guide, but I have books in there that teachers have in their classroom that they can do a read aloud that is relevant to this math topic, so that they can do a lesson and integrate the topics of English and reading and in the math classroom. And then on the right, these are instructional activities that we link in that are relative to the lesson. So I also have in there release test items. These are questions the VDOE has released that are former test questions that they give to us as samples. So they give us so that we know what the test questions could look like. And then linked in our activities, games, lesson plans. And then what you see next to the colored blocks, those are I can statements. So those are things that we call them I can statements. Those are things that kids should be able to say, I can do this when they're done learning this standard or learning this SOL. And then each color represents a different skill in the Bloom's taxonomy triangle. So just as they get progressively more difficult. So that's what those links are all the lessons and activities and resources. And most of those are homegrown, things that I've made, things that teachers have made, things, we partner with other divisions, especially in math. We partner with other divisions to share resources. So those are all region 1 resources. And there's just more. And then these are just some of the assessments we use in elementary school. Some of them are formal, like from the state, like the VDOE growth assessments and the PALS tests. We give them in the fall to diagnose student needs and see who needs support. And then some of them are ones we've made, like the number sense screeners. We give them in the fall, we give them in mid-year, we give them in the spring, so we can see where students are and how they're progressing, and we can monitor to see their growth and make changes in our instruction if we need to. And then we also make changes in interventions if we need to that way. Contrary to popular belief, assessments are not just for grades. We give them to decide, who needs more support, what changes need to be made in instruction, and where to shift any support, like with our specialists and our coaches. We just finished mid-year assessments with in literacy and math, so we could see where any kind of new intervention needs to go. Our K-2 students are constantly being assessed, but it's not like a test. It's performance-based. So if they have to say count money, that we put coins down in front of them and they count it. It's not a test like paper pencil, or draw a triangle, or, that's the kind of way we assess them.
Secondary continues with many of those best practice assessments, like common assessments, and then also performance-based, project-based assessments. As a division, we're working towards implementing Mastery Connect next year, which really harkens back to something that Ms. Gum just mentioned a moment ago, and looking at assessment as a tool to help inform instruction rather than simply a grade. So Mastery Connect is something that we'll be able to use. That's a platform that will help us analyze data focused on true student growth and understanding rather than simply a grade.
And so all that comes together, and then we have our daily classroom instruction. And these are just some pictures that we've taken, take pictures every day when we're in classrooms. And these are just some pictures we took in the classrooms recently this year.
And as an instructional department, we aim to support teachers and to keep all of the instructional staff abreast of updates. Two ways that we do that are through targeted professional development based upon student and teacher needs, and our instructional newsletter. You can see here that our instructional newsletter includes links to VDOE updates by department, as well as other pieces of information just to help staff. In the fall, we offered professional development on collaborative teaching and discourse strategies, which are the slides that you can just see the title page or the title slide up for both of those. And the reason that we offered professional development on these two things was because teachers were interested in the topics, but more so we knew that our students needed them. We really wanted to reestablish collaboration in the classroom since coming off of the pandemic and some disjointed learning. So we decided to focus our efforts there. This needs-focused style of assistance is what we plan to continue.
Yeah, and the discourse in the classroom was just really to get them to start talking to each other again in the classroom, having the kids talk. And then we also started this year, if you're on social media, if you're on Twitter or Instagram, we started a page. We encourage you to follow us. NKCPS Learns on Instagram and on Twitter. We post things that we see in the classroom that are happening, things the teachers are doing, things the kids are doing, just all kinds of stuff. It's Jamie and I and the two instructional coaches that are under me, Sarah Berry and Kim Lawler. They post things under there that they're doing. Sometimes you'll see teachers doing professional development. Sometimes you'll see things that happen in the classroom. So anytime you see a post up there, it's either one of us or my two coaches. Definitely check that out and follow us on there. We'd love to show you what we're doing. Any questions?
Board members, questions, comments?
This, the NKCPS Learns, that's available for all parents, correct, to observe?
Mm-hmm.
So I asked that question because when I look at, you only have 64 followers.
Yeah, I know. We just started it this year, but.
Yeah, but I mean, I guess that's my point. We have 3,300 students, which would equate to probably almost, probably 5,500 parents. And I think it's amazing that you only have 64 followers.
I know. We got more on Instagram though.
I'm one of them.
Yes, I know. You do
too.
like me.
Well, I mean, and my point to that is I think you guys are trying to do an incredible job of getting information out there to the community and information to the parents. And I think this is one of those platforms that can be very, very helpful for parents to see what is happening daily or weekly in a classroom setting, for them to understand how important it is for them to be engaged in learning because of the efforts that your team puts forth and the efforts that go forth in the classroom, so that as these students are getting more acclimated to understanding assessments and SOL testing and what is required of them. At the same time, it's just as much required of the parents to help them through that process so they are better prepared to do that. And really, that's the end game that you're trying to communicate. It's the preparation so we do have better assessments and better standards so that they are more prepared to take these tests so on the continuum, they're just better off academically.
And we really want to just showcase all the really good stuff that's happening. There is really a lot of good stuff happening.
I was going to say, we would love for all parents to follow us because students of any age, be it kindergarten kids that Dana is working with or high school kids that I end up seeing, if you say, hey, I'd like to take a picture so that I can put you on Twitter. I mean, they get excited.
They want their picture taken.
We would love to have more followers on both of those platforms.
Yeah, the Instagram is definitely more popular than the Twitter, but they really like it. And the teachers like when their class is featured too. I've shared with the teachers, if I'm not even there, take a picture and you just email it to me and I'll put it up. I get emails all the time. So
good for you.
So I have somewhat of a general question. I'm curious about our local curriculum. How much do we customize what we're given? How much do we make it local? And that's sort of a general question.
We make a lot local.
Okay.
A lot of it is local. Right now, the math is different because math was done regionally. The regional curriculum, math specialists from all over Region 1 got together when the standards were changed in 2016 and developed an entire curriculum because we're not a Common Core state. We don't do Common Core standards. So publishing companies do not cater to us. So when you go to a publishing company and look for curriculum, sometimes it matches, most of the time it doesn't. And then you can spend a whole lot of money on something that doesn't line up and won't be what you need. So we developed in Region 1, there's about 50 math specialists that developed curriculum that is 100% aligned. So that one is very robust. Right now, I have put together a committee for science and social studies. I have materials in the science and social studies elementary folders that I've put together myself, but I also have a committee that I just started where we're going to start building up more. And then we have right now a committee of literacy committee where we're working together to build up more for reading right now too. So, but we are looking at more materials for reading as well. Reading's more difficult. There's just a lot more elements to put at play.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Don't go anywhere. You're almost done. Board members, I had a couple questions that I missed last time that I should have read answers to related to curriculum. So if it's okay, I can weave it in with Jamie and Dana because they are the experts. The first one, I'm not asking you to answer this. I'll give my answer and then you can kind of elaborate to it or jump in. Does the board regard SOLs as the best indication of scholastic achievement? Is there a better measure of student achievement? One of the reasons we did this presentation tonight is just so you can see how complex our curriculum is and that it comes from the state and those pieces. So SOL tests are just one measure, but not every test, every grade, everything tests. So there are multiple measures, including unit tests, performance assessments, classroom assessments. The dreaded exam we all hated is still alive and well as a summative assessment for some courses. So that is one piece of the puzzle. How the student does every day in their daily assignments as well as part of that. So that was one. Where does New Kent Public Schools SOL achievement scores rank with respect to other state school districts? I know I shared a slide earlier in the year about where we rank versus the state. I can pull together a more in-depth ranking sheet for that. So I'll work on that one. In reviewing the video he did on SOLs, and we got this question a couple of times, we have results for math, English, and science, but there are no results for history. So one, why is that?
Well, I believe that is this a trick question?
It's not a trick question. I was going to answer. I'm just making sure our answers.
So that was a state decision.
Yeah,
that was a state decision for the record, to the trick question, that was a state decision.
So the state took away that piece. That's one part of the puzzle. So when you don't
Right.
see history, I've heard people say, well, that must have benefited you. Absolutely not. We did the best in history than any other. You want to take something away that we're not doing as well in, it's not history. We do history in the other ways. We have the performance assessments, and we have to verify this with the State Department that we are providing this assessment and the students are performing in that. But that was, the state went on a push to reduce the number of SWL assessments that kids had to take, because the federal number is much lower than the state of Virginia's number. And history was the one that they kind of took out of that. It's still taught. My son just finished government as a senior, but it's just, there's no SOL assessment attached to it. Not a trick question. I apologize. Yes.
Well, and I think that part of the reason for that was because the state has recognized that our more traditional SOL tests are not always the best indicator of student achievement and student ability, that if you can give kids the opportunity to showcase their abilities in other methods, then you have a better opportunity to see what the child actually knows. And in history, which sometimes can come down to simple A, B, or C multiple choice tests, that was an easy one for them to choose to move away from, so that instead more emphasis could be put on other subject matters.
Fourth graders have a Virginia Studies test, but last year we did a performance-based assessment with that. So they did projects and things like that and submitted it. And then our third grade does a science performance-based and history performance-based assessments. So they only take an actual SOL test in math and reading. And those performance-based assessments that third grade does are project-based, and both schools collaborate on that so that they are doing the same projects together. So all third graders in New Kent do the same science projects and they do the same history projects.
Thank you, guys.
Lady, one more question, sorry,
Sure.
before I let you go. You mentioned navigating the DOE website, which is challenging, it's cumbersome. What do you recommend for a parent or a guardian who has a question about their child's curriculum? What should they do? Depending upon the question, but in
It depends on
general.
the question, yeah.
I was going to say, if it's navigating the website, by all means, reach out to one of us.
Yeah.
As like a first level of, hey, I'm just trying to find this. I mean, you could always reach out to your child's teacher. They'd be able to help out as well. But we would also be more than happy to help.
I can translate anything on that video.
Do you field a lot of questions from parents?
No.
Yeah, I do. I feel like
At the elementary level,
Mhm.
more so. Okay.
I get a lot. I feel like I don't know. I just feel like I get a lot.
Sure.
About reading and math.
Absolutely. Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda, graduation requirements and update. Mr. Ross Miller.
While Mr. Miller's doing double duty, getting the presentation up, we wanted to bring you a graduation requirements presentation because graduation requirements are still pretty rigorous and some things have been added to it that weren't there before. So I asked Mr. Miller, as he leads that world for us, to kind of bring us an update on graduation requirements and updates. And we track all of our students, especially at the high school, each day, but each course, each semester. So we always know where a kid is, what a kid needs to do, and whether they're in danger of not graduating or not. Our graduation rate last year was at an all-time high, and we want to continue to push that forward. So there you go, bought you enough time.
Thank
Mr.
you.
Miller.
Thank you. Madam Chair, members of the board, Dr. Nichols, members of the public, both here as well as at home. It's a pleasure to come before you today and talk about graduation requirements. They do change periodically, and oddly enough, there have been years where we have had a different set of graduation requirements for every class in high school, where like your 9th grade had one set, your 10th grade had another set, 11th and 12th. Each one had their own set of requirements. They changed 4 years in a row. So glad to give this and just go over where we're at today, because there are a lot of citizens, a lot of parents who don't understand this world and don't understand sort of how what all their child has to go through to get to graduation. It is a long journey. So let's go through the two basic types of diplomas and what's required for them, and a couple definitions along with each. So if you look here, we have the traditional subject areas. We have English, math, science, history, health, and PE. And then we jump into sort of electives, and they're broke out into several categories now. They didn't used to be. So you have this one group that is world language, fine arts, and CTE. Then you have EPF, which is economics and personal finance, and then general electives. So in the next column with credits required, a standard credit is the student taking the class and passing it. That is to earn a standard credit. The next column is a verified credit. A verified credit means you took the class, you passed it, and you passed an associated SOL test that went along with it. So this is one change that has happened over the last few years. The reduction in number of verified credits that is required. Used to be that and we'll get into it in a minute, in the advanced diploma, that you had to earn more verified credits, meaning you had to pass more math SOL tests, more science, more history. That has since been normalized to where each subject area you need one, and the two in English really refer to a reading SOL and a writing SOL. And those are both taken traditionally in the 10th or 11th grade year. So as we move down, when you get into the world language, fine arts, CTE, they do pull those apart and say, you know, within these electives, you do need 2 years of something that's sequential in there. So it could be 2 years of a world language, 2 years of a specific fine art that's sequential, or 2 years within a single CTE area that's sequential. So there's specific, especially within the world of CTE, there's specific courses that tie to one to the other that make them a sequence. And that's what we look for. Economics and personal finance, oddly enough, is like the only required course that is specifically called out here. That most other requirements can be met through a variety of courses. The economics and personal finance course is specifically called out in code in Virginia that must be taught. So a student there learns about, in the economics portion, all things economics, macroeconomics, microeconomics, world economics, just all sorts of economics. Then the personal finance is how do you manage your finances? And so good skills that they've pulled out and said every student in Virginia is going to have if they're going to graduate. And then they finish off with 4 electives, so a total of 22 credits required to graduate, and 5 of those must be verified with an SOL test. So then when you jump to an advanced diploma, the verified credits, as I said earlier, stayed the same. However, some of the subject area requirements change. So we're going to jump back and forth a little bit here. So with the standard, remember, you're 4 English and then 3 for your 4 core subject areas that people typically associate with. When you jump to an advanced, you need 4. So you have to take one every year. Then health and PE stays the same. You'll notice that world language now stands alone. You have to have at least 3 years of a world language. It has to be the same one. You can do this also with 2 of 2. The minimum, though, is the 3 years. But if you do two languages for 2 years each, you're going to go to 4 credits. So you can meet it either way. You still have to have the economics and personal finance course. And now with an advanced diploma, you have to have 1 credit coming from either a fine art or a CTE class. And then your electives come down to 3, but your total number of credits still stands at 26. So it's 4 more credits to get an advanced diploma than it is a standard diploma. So that's what most people typically look at and say, well, there's my requirements to graduate. Here's some additional ones that have been put in place over the last couple of years. So one, and this is for either standard or advanced diploma, you have to complete an AP course, an honors course, an international baccalaureate course, or a dual enrollment course. Or if you're not going to do one of those, you need to take part in a high quality work-based learning experience. And so that there's a variety of different options for work-based learning experiences, but basically you have to spend time learning in basically a work environment. And we're working on actually increasing the number of opportunities we provide to students with work-based learning. That's a big push for us that we've been working at the high school level. Then the last piece is you have to earn a CTE credential. So this is you have completed a sequence within a specific area of CTE and then taken the certification test that would then earn you your credential. So you have to do one of those three on top of the previous requirements. You also, every student in Virginia must complete a virtual course. It doesn't have to be fully virtual. There's several options there that we can put in place. Like there can be parts of a course that can be virtual, but you have to have virtual components fit into your curriculum. So we do that. It's been pretty easy the last 2 years to be able to certify that one. The other one is first aid, CPR, and AED training. Every student to graduate must have training in CPR and how to use an AED. So we do that through our 10th grade PE classes, and they take a day and or a couple days. They bring out CPR dummies, and everybody uses those. And then they bring out an AED trainer machine and go over how to use that. Also, you have to be able to demonstrate the 5 C's: so critical thinking, creativity, collaboration, communication, and citizenship. We do that in pretty much all of our classes. Students have to demonstrate those in order to show that they are proficient. Our teachers also, as part of their goal setting, every year set goals on how they incorporate those into their classroom and how do they incorporate the use of the profile of Virginia graduate and our own local New Kent graduate into their course. Some of the barriers that that students face that typically give problems are these two. And really the first one is the one that causes students the most problems, are the verified credits. Those 5 SOL tests that they must pass. Usually history is an easy one to get taken out of the way in 9th grade. Math is the same way. Students do struggle with some of the math tests, but you can usually complete it early in your career. With Algebra 1, as soon as you take that and pass it, then you've earned that verified credit. In science, there's a SOL test in just about every science course. You start with your first high school science course, you take an SOL test, and as soon as you pass one, you're done. The one that really pushes students is the reading and the writing, because they don't come until the 11th grade. And so that's the one that it's sometimes can be a scramble to get students past. And it's not necessarily anything with the instruction. It's more it's the first time a lot of students will have been assessed this way in writing their entire career. At this point, there's no longer a 5th grade writing test. And for the last couple of years, there hasn't even been an 8th grade writing test. And so for our students going through right now, that this is the first time that they have hit an SOL test for writing. And so that is somewhat of a barrier for them. But the verified credits are the ones that students struggle with, because up until high school, you take the SOL test and we use that data to help us to plan instruction for our students, to select materials that will better equip our students, and we do provide remediation, but a student can still move on to the next grade if they pass all their classes. In high school, that's where if you don't pass that SOL, then you start to limit your opportunities to pathways towards graduation. So it's a little bit different once you get to high school. The other one is that CTE AP dual enrollment work-based learning experience. We have a lot of opportunities for our students to meet this. So I put it there as a barrier, but we don't have very many students who struggle with that. Every now and then it does pop up, but we don't have anyone not graduate because of it. It's just one thing that can come up right towards the end that we scramble a little bit to get students credentialed or something along those lines, but it's one that we can usually get taken care of pretty easily. So, happy to answer any questions.
Can you explain the difference, or what is the advantage in having an advanced diploma versus a standard diploma?
Certainly. The big advantage of it is basically what are you looking to do outside after high school? Is usually, and it is not a lock-in, but usually students who are looking to go on to college would pursue an advanced diploma for a variety of reasons. One reason is if you're going there, then you're going to want to get the foreign language out of the way, and that automatically is the big kicker for getting the advanced diploma. But the biggest difference is, what are you looking to pursue out after high school? Again, If you're looking to go to college, more encouraging you to get your advanced diploma. Not that you can't go to college with a standard diploma, because you can. So,
Mr. Miller, the verified credits for, in particular, middle school students that are taking, it's different. So can you explain that? Is it, so they have to take the SOL, correct?
So, all right. So the federal law, so there's the balance between state graduation requirements and federal law requirements. So with state graduation requirements, when you take an end of course or a high school credit class, you must take the end of course test that associates with it until you've met your graduation requirements. So if you're at the middle school and you're taking Algebra 1, geometry, or any high school credit class that has an SOL associate, you will take the SOL there, and it will count towards your verified credits for high school graduation. Where things start to become a little confusing is federal requirements say that at every level you must be tested in reading or math, reading, and science. And I'll get back to one of your earlier statements in a little bit as to why we don't see the history on this on the state's website. But so this federal government says reading, math, and science must be tested at every level. So even if you've met your graduation requirements at the middle school, when you come to the high school, we still are required to give you the science and a math and a reading SOL. The only ones that you can take care of over there is the math. But when you get here, you're still going to have to take a math SOL. Don't tell the kids, but you don't have to pass to graduate. We want everybody to give their best, but it is a requirement that we're going to give you that test anyway. So it still counts towards your high school requirement.
Understood.
The reason why you don't see a lot of history on the state's report card is the report card meets a federal requirement. The federal requirement does not require you to give a history test at every level.
Okay.
So,
Are the SOLs given at the semester and at the end of the year?
so it depends on which level you're at. So this year, for the first time, our 3rd through 8th grade were required to take a start of year reading and math test, and they were called the growth assessments. The state wanted to take a look at basically in legislation, they put forth that we wanted a test at the beginning, a test at the middle, a test at the end to be able to measure growth throughout the year. The last couple of years, we've used growth by looking at end of course of 1 year to end of course of the other year. However, you're looking at different content. And so you'd be testing students on different material. So instead, what they came up with was we want to give you a beginning of year test and a mid and an end of year test. However, they're phasing it in. So this year, all 3 through 8 took a beginning of the year growth assessment. They didn't call it an SOL, but it's very similar. And then they're going to take their SOL at the end and measure growth across the board. Next year, they'll do all 3 assessments. So 3 through 8, they'll do a fall growth assessment, a winter mid-year check, and then an end of year SOL test. Here at the high school, because we are on a 4x4 and we have classes that end first semester, we do give us SOLs test at the end of the first semester for any fall classes that students took part in. So one of the things that we do to help combat the verified credits is students have 3 opportunities every year to take an SOL test. So you can take it in the fall, you can take it in the spring, you can take it over the summer. So when we see that they're struggling and they do not pass their SOL test the first time for a high school credit class, we do provide remediation the next semester, and immediately they go back into that test, as well as if they've taken the follow-up course, they'll be tested on that as well. Then over the summer, we have opportunities. We use project graduation funds to provide remediation classes over the summer for these students. And then we can test them again over the summer. So student struggles their first, like in 9th grade, to pass Algebra 1. They've got like three opportunities per year, every year, to complete that. And we provide remediation along the way.
Back to the types of diplomas, on average, can you give us a percentage of how many, you might not have the exact data, but an idea of how many standard versus advanced, like from a percentage perspective?
I can provide that off the top of my head.
All right.
So,
Any other questions? Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. I'd never asked that before. I never thought about it, but I thought.
Yeah, we do report it to the state
Yeah.
and it is on our state report card.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks to the power of our state report card, which is on our website. 53% of our students are, and this is class of 2021, advanced diploma, 41 is standard. And then there's a percentage of other certificates, GED, et cetera, that's at 5%. So
Okay,
there are
thank
certain
you.
students in certain programs that aren't eligible.
And CTE is part of the advanced, isn't it?
CT is a part of both.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. There's more of a requirement at the standard to get a CTE sequence. Whereas on an advanced diploma, you have to have a CTE course, but it doesn't have to be sequenced.
Okay.
So one of the things we really work with students on either way is taking a look at how could they sequence courses that fit sort of their post-graduation goals. So,
Okay. Thank you very much.
thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. Next item on the agenda, we're moving to old business. So fiscal year 22-23 budget update. Dr. Nichols and Ms. Haney-Morheim.
Right. Good evening again, board members. At our last work session, we discussed some of the big pieces of the budget, which you'll see before you tonight is the superintendent's recommended budget for FY23. So this next slide is just a review about our budget process. And I did hear the comment about an additional advisory committee, and I think that's worth pursuing. Uncertainty continues to be the largest variable of the 23 budget process. I just want to thank Ms. Morkheim and her budget team for doing a phenomenal job of balancing those uncertainties related to funding, related to enrollment. It's just been an incredibly difficult process when you don't have all the variables you need. We have met with division directors and principals. We have reviewed current needs and position requests. We've looked at a broader lens, so we're forecasting a couple of years down the road. Parent and teacher advisory, which I have again this week, Wednesday, I believe. We're also in this budget maintaining the capability to pivot as needed due to that uncertainty. We're also utilizing our strategic grant utilization, which I'll talk about in a minute to move New Kent forward. So as we see needs, it's where does this need best fit? Is it operating? Is it capital? Is it grant? Revenue outlook. So additional state revenues right now, this could change as well between House and Senate, but we're looking at $959,000 roughly in additional state revenue. Our budgeted ADM, and this is a forecast for us too. So ADM is the average daily membership. We're doing this on 3,300 students. So we have seen a rebound in the past year in student population. Some of that is due to students coming back. Some of that is due to the extreme growth in the county. I just got today's housing report for January and February, and we're setting a record pace on a record pace that was last year. So it also includes Quinton Elementary. So when you see the increase in revenue, that is planned revenue in partnership with the county. So there's a $1.4 million increase for operating Quinton Elementary. And that comes in the form of positions and then paying electricity and different things like that. But I'll dive into that slide. We do have an additional operating request from the county of $2 million for additional expenditure needs, which we'll talk about when we get into the next slide. School nutrition has increased due to participation. It has been free breakfast and lunch this year for all students. And we have set record numbers in school nutrition. That is a federal grant at no cost to us. We do not know for sure if that will continue next year. But keep in mind, school nutrition is self-sustaining. They create their own budget. They manage their own budget. They create their own funds. And then continued utilization of grant funding to meet mostly one-time needs. That's what we're really trying to do with our grants is if there's a one-time need or something that counts as a one-time need, to utilize our grant funding there and being very hesitant to put operating expenses into grants because these grants will go away. So this is our revenue outlook, and you can see the adopted FY 21-22. recommended for this year, and then the change associated with it. And I kind of went through some of those changes already. This is just the superintendent's recommended budget. At some point, this will come before you for approval, but this is your first time seeing the budget in its entirety. Then it goes to the county, and once they adopt, then we will come back and adopt as well. So there are a lot of steps left in this process. So school general fund would be an increase of 4.3 million. That includes Quinton, new state revenue, and additional county revenue combined. School textbook fund, you see, is a slight increase of 47,000. That is because we have additional students. So that's directly connected to our enrollment. You can see school nutrition, which has additional revenue in there of 611,000. Those are funds that they have been generating due to the additional students eating breakfast and lunch. And then school grants, you can see, is a slight increase there. So it brings the recommended FY 22-23 budget to $43.6 million. So that is all proposed. Quinton Elementary, so what we'll do is we'll dive in, and board members feel free to stop at any point and ask anything. Ms. Morkheim is on deck for expert questions. So this is Quinton Elementary School. We do plan to open fall of 22. It'll be at a cost of additional $1.4 million. Most of that is in new positions. So you need an assistant principal, you need a secretary. Most of the teaching force is coming from within the school division. Same number of kids, we're just moving it across buildings and spacing out to a degree, which will actually make way for a potential renovation in New Kent Elementary now that we'll have some space. But you can see the additional pieces, teachers that are there: art, music, gifted, reading remediation, math remediation, so forth. Does require a school nurse. We do forecast it requiring 3 additional bus drivers, and then stipends associated with it. In addition to the new position expenses, there are operating expenses, which you can see there. Utilities, general school maintenance, and other associated costs. So this is the proposal for salary and benefit adjustments. And if you've been following the House and Senate, they have various dueling proposals around this. So in this budget is a proposed 5% salary adjustment for employees. And the cost associated with that is 1.3 million, 1.337. We have state revenue of $646,430 to support that. So in that $900,000+, most of that is to go towards a 5% salary adjustment. So the additional would have to come from local support. So, and that is connected to the local composite index, which I'll share in just a minute. Anytime we do a salary adjustment, we realign our stipends. So our stipends for athletics, our stipends for activities. You saw our incredible music director of the year from the Virginia Thespian Society. So as we adjust salaries, we have a very smart plan that adjusts stipends associated with it. The big thing that we've talked about several times is we're anticipating some pretty significant healthcare increases of over 17%, 17.8%. So that would be an increase of $580,323. We are having additional discussion, and we are putting it back out for renewal. We do hope to get a lower price associated with that, but that's the forecast, working with our experts on that. And that's due to some high cost claimants and due to everything going up at this point. So
Couple
Yes.
questions on that.
Yes.
On the healthcare increases, do we combine that with the county's employees, or are these totally separate?
we do not. The county is, we are self-funded. The county is in a pool. So pros and cons to both, and the county and I talk about this quite often. If you are self-funded and things are going well, you are able to have greater flexibility and drive down some of those costs with your healthcare fund balance. When it's not, you have pieces like this with the healthcare increase. The other piece that we've been able to do with our employees is provide a healthcare premium holiday in December. We've been able to do that because we are self-funded and we control that variable there as well. So Local choice. There you go. I knew it was coming to me at some point, the difference between two, self-funded and local choice. School divisions across the Commonwealth are in different groups. Some go into that pool piece and then some stand alone. I will tell you, some groups are very hesitant to bring educators into their group because we do traditionally have high costs associated with education. The VRS non-professional group rate adjustment, that is a VRS increase. So there's the associated cost with that as well.
One more question.
I thought you had to.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was thinking how I could phrase this, but for like healthy lifestyles and behaviors, are people's deductibles and what they pay lower, versus somebody who, they smoke?
Yeah, so we do have a tiered wellness plan for employees that allows them to drive down their premiums. And it's based on a number of different factors, including wellness points and wellness logs and health screenings and all the different components that would go into that. So yes, we absolutely do. And I can have our HR department do it. I think it would be worthy of a bigger presentation along with healthcare, like what we're doing about it, and kind of share those pieces. But yeah. Recruitment and retention. So beyond the 5%, we really would like to adjust our paraprofessional wages. That would be additional 4.93%, which the total for that adjustment would be $69,000. I've said at this table many times during the height of the pandemic, we stayed open based on our paraprofessionals and our support staff. And when you look at the work we trust them to do with their compensation, we really have to make an adjustment here. When we look at our openings in the school division this year, it's mainly around the paraprofessional piece because it's hard to have somebody take that job when they can go somewhere else and make more and have less certifications. So our paraprofessionals have to have 2-year degrees or equivalents connected with it. And oftentimes the starting wage is just above what minimum wage would be. So definitely advocating for additional wages there. And also really the same story with our clerical and technical skills. Yes,
So
Ms. Barber.
is the 4.93, is that on top of 5%?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes, ma'am. And that would be an average because depending on where you were on the scale associated with that. Transportation, some of our neighbors came out with some new starting scales for bus drivers. And we don't believe, we would love to be at the very top of it, but we believe we can be competitive with our total package that we offer, but we'd like to make some transportation market rate adjustments. And you can see the total price there, $67,222. That allows us to do two things. One, increase starting wage to remain competitive, which is what one of our neighboring school divisions do. What they didn't do was the second bullet, and that is to take care of the steps after that. So our neighboring school division, somewhat neighboring in the region, raised starting bus driver pay to 21 and did not adjust anybody else. And you can imagine what that made the 20-year bus driver feel when a starting person was making more than them. So we benefited from that and we gained a couple drivers in the process. What we'd like to do is increase the starting wage and then run that through so that all drivers are taken care of. While we do recommend increasing pay by 5%, that would allow us to increase our starting teacher salary by 4%. So you can see the starting bachelor's at $47,750 and the master's at $51,093.
And it looks like, it's hard to see on this grid, on this table over here, but it looks like we're mostly competitive with the master's degree, but we're really not so competitive with the bachelor's degree, which I think is what we want.
Yeah, we've made a conscious decision in the past 3 years to focus on that master's degree scale. One, we're finding most of the applicants coming out are receiving a master's degree. Many universities that have education programs have switched to a 5-year master's. So that is the market. And then when we're getting employees from other school divisions, they're also coming with a master's. So we've made a conscious effort to be most attractive in the area where there are the most candidates.
Understood. Thank you.
Also on recruitment and retention, this is something that we added during the pandemic. And that's the use of school-based substitutes. So that's a person that comes to your school every day and they fill in wherever you need them, but you are guaranteed to have them every day. Sub-fill rates using external companies right now are at an all-time low, around 35%.
35%?
Yes. So by having school-based subs, another key factor in us staying open, besides just having incredible employees, is school-based substitutes. By having at least one, but in most of our schools right now using alternative funds, we have 2 and 3. And it's allowed us to fill those holes and give teachers the planning that they need. And it's really gotten a lot better in the past few weeks, but it's been a key strategy.
In normal times, what would a typical average number of substitutes you'd have in a building a day? What would that number be?
It depends, and it's seasonal. So Mondays and Fridays, you would imagine, are your worst, as in most organizations. And then in February, March with the flu and those different pieces, it wouldn't be uncommon at a high school to have 10 people out. High school that has almost 1,100 students, but it really just depends. But if you have a school-based sub and you can get a fill rate that's higher than 35%, you can do pretty well.
So that's good. So
Yeah.
they're going to always be busy.
And we're not looking to keep the pandemic number that we've had before. Like at the middle school right now, we have 3. We're not planning to keep that level because we're not planning for that level of outage. So we're scaling that back, but have seen that as a key strategy. We've also used that school-based sub and are working to convert at least one into our residency program that will then become a teacher for us. With costs going up, it's no surprise that our regional programs are having costs going up too. Most of these, if not all, are tied to an additional 5% increase in salary. So Code RVA, our total increase would be $6,000. We're not changing any seat requirements at this time. I do think it's something we need to continue to look at. Code RVA, the increase is $6,000. Maggie Walker Governor School is $3,084. Bridging Community has the largest increase of $21,804, but we send 75 students there versus 12 other places. So student by student, it's a reasonable increase. And
That's total. That's not.
That's total.
no, yes, I'm sorry. That is total. That is the total increase, not the per student increase. No, I wouldn't have been so accepting of that. But yes, great question. And then Chesapeake Bay Governor School, that the total increase on that is $3,696. So across those schools, 36,000, but really associated with that additional pay increase. Operationally, we do have additional costs operationally as well. So custodial services will be going up. And we have a total of $426,000 associated with that. The biggest driver of that is Quinton Elementary School. By adding a 5th school, your custodial costs are going to go up. So you can see the price tag associated with Quinton alone. One of the things that we're working on now to try to drive down some of these costs is building utilization. So there are parts of the building at George Watkins, for example, we will not be utilizing nearly as much or full time, like some of the trailers that we have or cottages that we have out back. So we're working with our company that we outsource custodial to see if we can't drive down that cost as much. If you're not going to have 25 5th graders in there every day, then it doesn't need the same level of cleaning that it would otherwise. Also, wage adjustments, and those are connected to minimum wage as well. And we're looking at the consideration of additional contracted days. We are now running full summer programs. So the Summer of More, which you'll hear about in a future board meeting, we have more kids in the summer than we've ever had before, hundreds more. So there's a need to have custodians on site where we didn't before. Transportation, I got gas today. It's no shock there that our fuel costs are going up. So about $40,000 related to transportation. Athletics, grounds, and maintenance, keeping that work up. And then we have a new executive director of technology, has been doing some baseline checks and assessments. So we do have some additional cost there for additional computer hardware expenses and malware protection, additional planning consideration, trying to build a bridge from 22 to 24, shifting to some more cloud-based services, automating some of our systems. Some of our systems are still a little more archaic. We're looking at a K2 pilot program to use a Lenovo tablet-based instead of the Chromebook. Of replacement cycle planning. So all of these wonderful devices that we have to be replaced. So looking at all those pieces, laptops, staff devices, network equipment, and so forth. Position requests. So we have recommended position requests and modifications totaling $530,000. And all of these are not additions. So there's to eliminate the part-time clerical at George Watkins. Nobody is eliminated in the process. That's a position that is currently vacant. But by going from 750 students to about 500 students, we don't need to have that same level of staffing. In addition, we can eliminate a vacant paraprofessional position. We are looking at 3 additional elementary teachers for growth. I mentioned the housing numbers that I received today. We believe that we're going to need 3 additional teachers connected to that growth. That will also help us with class size and give greater flexibility at those 3 schools. One of the things I'm really excited about is the addition of a new program here at the high school. We've talked about ROTC long before I got here, but definitely ever since I've gotten here, ever since I've been here. And that is a Navy Corps of Cadets instructor. So that's a full-time position that would be here at the high school, which would allow us to jumpstart that part of our career program. Now that is awaiting final approval from the Navy in April or May. So, but our budget has to be done before that. So we have it in there. If they put us in a planning year and it's the following year, we'll make that modification. Additional high school teaching position in career and technical education. An additional mechanic. We have additional buses and additional county vehicles working through those pieces. A technical position connected to technology, a trainer and driver transportation. We're working to set up our own CDL training site. This would be critical to make that happen. Right now, we have to rely on third parties and DMBs. There is a way, and transportation is working on doing that, we would be able to do CDLs on site for our folks.
That would be great.
It would just streamline the process. Additional transportation adjustments, moving employee from part-time to full-time, and then to have a full-time clinic attendant. Really, that's going to be at George Watkins. It says high school, but high school is where it was open. So you have that associated cost with that.
Dr. Nichols, for
yes,
these positions, I'll just use the Navy Corps Cadet instructor. That's an all-inclusive position, meaning you budget that amount of money that includes benefits, VRS, all of those things as well, correct?
Yes, sir. That is salary and benefits all in.
Correct. Okay.
Yes. So, and all of those are connected to this. When we're hiring, assume they're going to take benefits with New Kent County Public Schools, and we budget accordingly. And we budget around the step that they would come in at, either step 5 or step 10, because you're not always going to get a brand new person. So we make those adjustments budgeting. Yes. Continued careful planning of grant funded positions to support immediate needs. So working through flexibility. I mentioned school-based substitutes. That is something you could potentially put in a grant, one of the ESSER grants. However, if it's going to be something that you want for the next several years, you're going to have to find a way to have it in the operating budget at some point. So anytime we have a grant conversation, it's, does this ultimately need to be in the operating budget? How do you build a bridge to make that happen? School nutrition plans there, once again, is to increase revenues to the current reimbursement level. Additional staffing for Quinton Elementary School. They are hiring in the current year. As a matter of fact, just hired the Quinton Elementary School cafeteria manager and got to tour that space last week. Potential wage adjustments in FY22. Once again, making sure they're staying ahead of the minimum wage increases. Just to look at February meal averages. So we're serving 1,400 breakfasts a day and nearly 2,000 lunches a day. Our COVID-19 pandemic grant funding, our elementary and secondary school emergency relief, that's ESSER 2. So if you ever hear me say ESSER, it's the federal funds. We have $428,990 connected in that. That right now has been planned for summer of more for the next 2 summers. Furniture to assist with spacing. The additional custodial services during the pandemic, we had to do increased levels of cleaning, and also technology initiatives with the devices we had to purchase. ESSER 3, that is the big grant. We have an upcoming presentation on shifting usage of funds, and we'll have a public hearing and plan amendment required with that. So we kind of separated that to a degree tonight and really just focused on the superintendent's recommended budget. The goals on these funds are really to understand and address learning loss, provide our buildings and departments and schools what they need to be successful, move New Kent forward beyond the pandemic, and remain flexible within each additional funding source. So as we have new grant opportunities and new grants, we shift initiatives and we shift things into other funds and free up so that we have additional flexibility in the future. ESSER 3 is our longest running grant. So we have a significant amount of time to spend that. So we're working in the other grants right now to make sure those are spent out and providing additional flexibility in this ESSER 3 grant. Our next steps. So we are here tonight. This is the superintendent's recommended budget. We do have a proposed budget Mr. Hathaway at the county has a proposed budget presentation to the Board of Supervisors. His presentation is March 14th. We have a joint retreat, Board of Supervisors and School Board, where we'll go through a lot of this similar information. We will have a public hearing on the superintendent's recommended budget. Right now, we're trying to target whether that is the March work session or the April board meeting. Really, our urgency in this budget is once we have the salary component down, we can then go ahead and initiate contracts and have our folks sign for next year and get new employees on board. School board budget approval and final adoption, pending final adoption by the Board of Supervisors. So because this hinges on local funding, the Board of Supervisors has to adopt it and then we adopt it. So a number of steps in the process, but we're at the point where you have superintendent's recommended budget.
What's the likelihood that the state budget is known by March 14th? It's right now we've got the House and the Senate.
Not likely. Not likely. We
So
have
we'll need to be making
we have dueling
adjustments.
numbers in between those, and we've seen that one of the bodies we could see a small increase, and the other one we could see a significant increase up to 300,000. So we're just looking at those components and kind of waiting to see what we get. A lot could change, but we feel comfortable with the numbers we're presenting to you. And then there are a number of requests that did not make the cut, including an additional step for teachers. So teachers, when the pandemic first started, almost 2 years ago to the date, we did not do an increase for teachers, so they did not move up a step on their salary scale. I hear that at every meeting I attend about that step that they did not get. And I'm sure I'll hear it about it, teacher advisory on Wednesday. So one of the things that we could do if we received additional revenue would be to give additional money to our teachers. And I would support that, and I would put that forward. So any additional revenue that we have would be towards those factors and not towards new initiatives or new things.
Shouldn't we include that in our ask?
Great question.
I mean, I would like to include that in our ask.
I can cost that out for you more. We've talked about it. It's about.
I'm afraid of losing good teachers.
Well, and that's why when I look at what other school divisions are doing in Virginia, 5% keeps you flat. So if there's a way that we can do 5% and find a step, it does give us a little bit of an advantage. I mean, you see where we're located on the chart, but we can go back to the table with that. So, and we have some conversations this week that we can kind of talk through those pieces.
I think that's a good move to make.
And it would just be that piece. What we've tried to do in this budget is differentiate salaries. We have the 5% increase, but we're trying to do more for different groups to make us more competitive. That would be another strategy to make us more competitive. And in the scheme of a $40 million budget, it's not a lot.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Other questions, comments on the superintendent's recommended budget?
So we will have a more comprehensive budget book that goes along with the superintendent's recommended budget. If you go online to the budget department, you can see last year's version of it. That will be coming out in the next week as well. So this presentation, the full detailed budget book in the next week or so will be publicly available as well.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Nichols. Okay, last item on our agenda. Superintendent and school board member comments. Dr. Nichols, I'll give you a break for a minute since you just had a long presentation, so we can start with our school board member comments, and I'll go to my right. I'll start at my right. Ms. Barber, comments this evening.
I think it's very valuable for us to have the opportunity to see our students, and highlighting the middle school in great detail, I think was very illustrative of the talent and enthusiasm that we have in our schools. I'd also like to just underscore again the importance in our budget of recognizing the value of our teachers and our staff to the greatest extent possible.
Staskill?
I echo those comments. I was thrilled to be able to listen to our students sing tonight and have them with us. That was wonderful. Very thankful for all the hard work that you all have, that your team, everybody's put into our budget planning. I know there's still a lot more to go, but very thankful for all the hard work and appreciate it.
Okay, thank you. Ms. McBeath?
Yes, I echo the comments as well regarding the performance by our middle school students. It was wonderful to see them and hear them this evening. So I appreciate that opportunity. And certainly, as always, appreciate the spirited dialogue surrounding books and, the different perspectives that people bring, and do appreciate that from our community as well. Look forward to being part of the process with the upcoming budget. And so thank you for that opportunity.
Thank you. And Mr. Mead?
Yeah, it was a great evening to do that. I had no anticipation that I would spend $50 on a picture when I got here tonight. But I can tell you though, I say that kind of sarcastically, but honestly, that'll be the best $50 I spend all year, because what it does for me, it really highlights a student's passion to live out, whereas 2 years ago that was not even possible. And to me, it's just a small investment to give back to these students, to appreciate all the hard work that they put into to everything they do every single day, and with their teachers partnering with them to encourage that passion each and every day, whether it's through the arts or through music or through those things. And now that spring has sprung, we do know this, that it will change. But I am excited to see how we ended up this winter for all of our athletic teams, with our girls going to the states, and basketball, wrestling, winning another state championship. It has just been a great run for our athletic teams. And now today, all of our teams had scrimmages. And so I look forward to this, to the next season that we're having, and Mr. Miller talking about graduation. So I look forward to the prom. I look forward to in-person graduation as well. I think it's just going to be a great end of the year celebration now that we are somewhat as normal as we can possibly be for a school division over the last 2 years. So thank you, constituents, and thank you, teachers and administrators, for doing your part. And thank you, God, for bringing the rain. Hallelujah.
Who brought an umbrella?
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking.
Okay, nobody. Yes, we're getting torrential rains right now, but I just want to echo what's been said by my fellow board members. Every week, Dr. Nichols sends us his Friday follow-up where he talks about activities he's conducted in the schools during the week. And what he said last week was it was probably work is beginning to look more and more like it did pre-pandemic. So I think we're seeing that every week. We're seeing it at our board meetings, and that's very helpful. I too want to echo, a lot of you talk about volunteering in schools. I do want to remind you that our schools are open for in-person volunteers. So I look forward to seeing some of you there. I know I've emailed a lot of you about participating in our schools and helping in that way. When you see it, you understand it. And finally, we look forward to the continuation of the budget process. And full transparency, we are meeting with our Board of Supervisor counterparts. So we have a good partnership there. So we're committed to working through this budget in the upcoming weeks. So those are my comments this evening. Dr. Nichols, your final thoughts.
Thank you, Ms. Winford. I read something this morning that 2 years ago, this was the last normal week before everything changed. And we've been through a lot together in the past 2 years, but I couldn't be proud of where we sit today because we went through all of this together. And I am feeling more and more like a superintendent, not a medical health expert or a quarantine contact tracing expert. You saw why I love what I get to do every day when you get to see these kids come in. Like I get to do that every day. I do board meetings twice a month, but I get to do that every day. And we have some of the most talented, amazing, committed teachers, staff, and students. I was helping out at elementary school Friday and was listening to bus radio. If you ever want to hear something interesting, listen to bus radio. And I heard this bus driver, and this, I'll end with this, because it just embodies why New Kent is amazing. The bus driver got on the radio and said, I just dropped off X family. Somebody's always there to pick them up. I just don't feel good about it. The kids were old enough to go by themselves. So that's our responsibility. You're beyond first grade. I could drop you off. Bus driver said, I just don't feel good about it. I'm going to take the rest of my run. Is it okay if I go back? Nobody knows I'm listening to this radio, and transportation supervisor says, absolutely. You go back and make sure those kids are okay. That's what we do. We're not perfect. We make mistakes, but we take care of kids. And we have great graduation rates, and we're going to have a great in-person graduation rate, and we do it all together. So that's just one story about how amazing our staff is, but there are many, many more. And I can talk about all of them until the rain stops if you'd like. But Ms. Swinford, that does conclude my comments. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And our next meeting is Monday, March 21st. That is our